I'm pleased to take a short call on part 2 and really to reflect, as my colleagues have done, the implications of what really is the major change from our perspective that this bill brings forward. And this is the treatment of 12 to 13-year-olds. And here we have children, and we know that the Minister has been very, very reluctant to use the word children when referring to this group of from 12 to 13-year-olds, but that's who they are. And when we put them into a criminal jurisdiction like the youth court, then it has a whole series of implications. And here we have this particular section actually identifies again some of the concerns we have. So here we are, children 12 and 13 will be asked to provide, voluntarily I assume, bodily samples. And once collected, it's kept there. And all of the uses and abuses of those samples are possible in the future. The major one, Mr. McClay, is giving a dog a bad name, because when a 12-year-old does stray and eventually comes back to the fold, those samples are kept for a long time, and one does not know how those samples are going to be used or abused. The point is, 12-year-olds, Mr. McClay, and the member ought to be an advocate for 12-year-olds and protect their rights. And this section doesn't, and this bill doesn't. So here is an example of what is likely to happen to them. They expose themselves to this bodily samples regime, if you like, is that's there. And this part of the bill opens them up to them. Where are the protections for 12 and 13-year-olds? We will be in breach of our international conventions. What have been the discussions around that? We haven't heard any of those arguments. The Minister may want to take a call and give us those kinds of guarantees. You know, Mr. McClay, that Mr. McClay does know, Mr. Chairman, that these issues were not discussed any length in this select committee. It was taken for granted. But now, when we come back and have a look at it in the totality of what this particular bill provides, then here we do have a major glitch that ought to be addressed, ought to be talked about. How is it? What are the explanations we will provide to the responsibilities we have in terms of our United Nations obligations? They have not been reported. They have not been discussed. They have not been identified. They were not discussed in the Select Committee. And here we are again, making the risks of exposing 12 to 13-year-olds, and we're told a small number, but we don't know what the numbers are going to be, to this particular regime. And we believe that those children ought to have the protections, and the protections are not there at the moment. So what is the real purpose of this? How is the Minister going to address our United Nations obligations to protect children? And one also wonders, what other implications are there for 12 to 13-year-olds being caught by the regime in this particular act? You know, what might they be? Which are the ones that have been talked about? The President, Minister and the Chair might want to explain some of those. In the end, these are ethical questions as well. And the ethical questions that accrue to this particular part, this aspect of this bill, have not been answered. They're not addressed. The Minister, in the speeches she has given so far, has not been willing to engage in a philosophical or ethical justification for these particular provisions. But here is, Mr. Chairman, another opportunity for the Minister in the Chair and perhaps other speakers on the other side to address that particular question and to convince us that the protection children, because that's who they are, children, deserve and demand, will be accorded. And indeed, those are the obligations we have, the guarantees we have given in our own child protection United Nations regulations, rules and conventions in New Zealand, and those we need to address. So I would like to hear some explanation as to why this is necessary. How does this really protect the needs of very young children, Mr. Chairman? And I look forward to those explanations.